let's see. I want to go back to the question of the domestic emoluments clause, Mr. Borden. We talked about the foreign emoluments clause, which was an attempt to guarantee the undivided loyalty of the President and all members of Congress to the American people and not to foreign powers. And that's why there was this absolute prohibition on payments of any kind, whatever, coming from foreign governments. And so that's why we're very concerned to get as much information from the GSA about whatever you know and whatever you can find out about foreign governments using the Trump Hotel for business because of the President's continuing business ownership interest in the Trump Hotel. But the domestic emoluments clause limits the President to his salary in office, and we can't increase it, we can't reduce it, but also it says that the President cannot receive any other payments from the U.S. government or from any of the individual United States. And yet, we have reports that the GSA gave the hotel $534,000 in federal credit for maintaining the historic clock tower. Is that correct? Can I confirm that with you?
I'd have to get an answer to in writing on that. I don't know the numbers. I know there is an arrangement where they provide some services for the clock tower, like cleaning services, but I'm speaking off of memory on this, but I'll get you an answer in writing.
So without pinning you down right now, although I would love the accurate information later, but without pinning you right down on the number, you can confirm that the GSA does have some arrangement in which it makes a payment to the hotel for keeping up the clock tower, which is on the building.
I'm working off a dim memory here, so I will get that answer to you in writing, but my recollection is there was an arrangement where some services like cleaning are provided to the clock tower.
Gotcha.
That's what we're paying for that.
In the first few months of the Trump administration, which is the only period in which we have any detailed, accurate information at all from the federal government, taxpayers funded massive payments to the Trump properties, such as the Trump Hotel in D.C. The Department of Defense spent $147,379.50 on Trump properties, including the Trump Hotel in Washington. The Commerce Department spent almost $4,000 primarily at the Trump Hotel in the first few months alone. We don't know how much the Department of Commerce spent after that period of time. The American people have a right to know how much is being spent there, and Congress, on behalf of the American people, has a right to obtain this information because we have to defend the integrity of the business practices of the government. NBC has reported that $56,000 has been spent by the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, and the GSA itself at the hotel. Does the GSA actually occupy rooms at the hotel for business purposes?
I'd have to check on the facts on that, but we often get tagged for spending that's not ours because it's going through one of our programs like Fed Rooms.
I see.
And so forth. Just in general on federal employees staying at the hotel, as long as it fits within the per diem, there's no prohibition on that.
Well, what legal authority or opinion are you relying on at GSA for continuing to allow federal agencies and departments to spend money at the hotel or foreign governments to spend money at the hotel?
I don't believe we have any authority over other agencies or foreign governments where they choose to.
No, I'm sorry. I meant what legal authority in the sense of what precedent or what opinion, what legal opinion are you basing your acquiescence to these practices on?
I'm not aware of a provision in the lease beyond the one that you mentioned in your previous statement that we've already sort of been discussed. That would, but the agency has made a determination that the tenant is in compliance with that provision.
Wait, that provision says that no government official can profit and benefit in any way from the hotel. Is that not right?
I don't want to characterize what the provision does or doesn't mean, but there was a legal opinion discussed with me.
Can you read it to us? Do you have it?
It might take me a few minutes to,
Okay.
actually, I don't even think I have that one in my binder. I mean, certainly.
Maybe I can have someone hand it to me. But I understood it to be completely clear and unambiguous, crystal clear, that, that neither an official of the U.S. government, an elected official of the U.S. government, nor an elected official in the District of Columbia could benefit in any way from the lease. The GSA's position, I think, during the Obama administration was that this would prevent the president or any other elected official from deriving profits from the hotel, and that position apparently changed with the new administration. Is that right?
To my knowledge, there wasn't any official GSA position on that provision in the lease. The legal analysis that was done on that provision in the lease, and is discussed in the Inspector General's report, hinged on the admit to language in that provision. So there's a distinction between a continuing lease versus being entered into a lease. That's the admit to language, I believe, in that provision. And I'm a lawyer by education, but I'm not serving as a lawyer for the agency.
I got you. Well, the Inspector General of the GSA raised profound questions about this. In other words, he saw it as a prohibition on the president being able to collect money from the Trump lease. I mean, look, the common sense perception of this is simply that the president, as president of the United States who oversees the GSA, is acting as the landlord, but then on the other side, the president is acting as the tenant. So, look, the purpose of the domestic emoluments clause was to say that the president has one way to make money off of his tenure as president, which is his salary. That's it. You're not going to get extra money from the Defense Department and the Commerce Department and the GSA and the State Department, and yet it appears that we're violating that. The purpose of the Foreign Emoluments Clause was to guarantee the independence of the president so he would be zealously devoted to the American people, not to the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia or Turkey or Azerbaijan or somebody else who comes and decides to spend $50,000 or $100,000 at the hotel. So I guess what I'm troubled about is that we have a sense of urgency about getting to the bottom of this. The chairman of the committee sent on April 12th, 2019, to Emily Murphy, the administrator at GSA, a letter asking for a whole lot of stuff that we haven't gotten back yet. For example, all documents referring or relating to Mazars USA LLP related to the old post office. Why? Because when the president, acting as a businessman, made his deal for the old post office, Mazars had to present all of the documents reflecting the financial condition of his company and where he's getting his money from, who he's doing his business with, and so on. We want those documents, but we haven't gotten them. Do you know why those haven't been produced?
So you're referring to the documents that before the lease was initiated, establishing sort of financial wherewithal and so forth?
Exactly.
Right. We have that request from the committee. There are also some confidentiality provisions regarding those provisions, but we are willing to work with the committee and see how we can accommodate that.
I mean, you understand that when Congress makes a request for documents from anybody in the country, everybody's first instinct is to say, oh, we stamped it confidential. We got a rubber stamp, one of those blue ones, and we put it in the ink, and then we stamped it confidential. What does that mean to us? We're the Congress of the United States. We're representing the American people. So everybody has a duty to present documents and witnesses that are being requested by Congress, unless there is some kind of legal immunity that's been recognized by the Supreme Court. So I think that stamping a document confidential is beside the point from the standpoint of our wanting to see it. This is a lease that relates to the U.S. government, and it relates to the constitutional powers of Congress, and it relates to prohibitions on money going to the President of the United States. So I'm not detecting in your answer any intention to give us this stuff. Is that right?
I think that's wrong. First thing I'd want to say, just in general, is about 55% billion in contracts flow through GSA, and we have a lot of confidential financial information where we make arrangements to protect that information for our business partners, and that's one of the reasons they're willing to do business with us. However, we're not hiding behind this, and we are actively working with the committee and working on ways we can accommodate the committee's interest in that. I would point out it's been mentioned that I believe some of the monthly financial summaries had been produced earlier, and they showed up in the New York Times shortly thereafter.
Okay. So when you say you want to work with the committee, what exactly does that mean? In other words, that you do want to produce those financial documents, or well, I guess what I'm saying is, where's the blockade? Where's the blockage happening? Because GSA had no problem turning over materials like that before. Now there's a problem turning it over, and is it a problem in GSA? Is it a problem at the White House? Is it a problem with Trump the president? Is it a problem with Trump the businessman? Is it the problem with the Trump hotel? Like, where is the blockage coming from us obtaining the Mazars document?
These are agency decisions,
yeah,
and we're trying to treat them, and it's obviously a unique situation, but we're trying to treat them the way we treat any other confidential business documents that the agency holds. And to answer your earlier question, which I don't think I got to, was it's the accommodation process, which a number of cases have referred to, is the process where the two co-equal branches of government work through legitimate interests that they're both trying to protect.
Yeah. I see it a little bit differently. We are the lawmaking branch of government. We represent the people. The president's job is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed, not thwarted, not circumvented, not violated. And as the district court found in the Mazars case, upholding this committee's power to obtain documents, if this body has the power to impeach the president, which we do, we have, by definition, all of the subsidiary power to get any information that we need in order to investigate the president. And I think that logical syllogism is just inescapable. The president doesn't have the power to impeach Congress. We have the power to impeach the president. So we're not co-equal in that sense. We are the people's branch of government. We're the lawmaking authority. We pass the laws. The president's job is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. So, I wish there were some way we could break the logjam, because I've seen this process, and I think it's frustrating to members on both sides of the aisle, where people will come from an agency or department and say, well, we're working on it, and so on, and then you don't hear anything from them for 2 or 3 months. They get called back and they say, we're working on it, we're cooperating, and it looks like a shell game to everybody else. And so, please, can you just tell me, this will be my final question along this line, what is the legal authority for GSA saying this is that a government lease, a U.S. government lease for the taxpayers, is confidential, and the representatives of the American people in the United States Congress can't obtain access to it? Well, what's the legal authority for that? Is there a Supreme Court case? Is there a D.C. Circuit Court case? Is there a U.S. District Court case? Where is that coming from?
Sir, we're not making a legal assertion about these documents. We're, like I said, willing to work with the committee and try to accommodate the interests. As you know, there isn't a federal rules of oversight procedure. There's not a third-party magistrate calling balls and strikes. But there's not. It's not something where you have motions and assertions and so forth. All
right. So you do advance no legal claim that you've got an immunity from us obtaining that document?
I'm not sitting here advancing that. That would be something for our lawyers to do.
Okay. Well, but on behalf of the agency, I thought you just said you're not making a legal argument.
The point I was trying to make is that the interaction between Congress, a committee of Congress, and agencies of the entities of the executive branch in this accommodation process isn't taking place in a legal forum. It's a negotiation between co-equal branches of government.
Okay. All right. Well, I would love to do whatever we can to sit down and go through the documents. If you could give us a list of the documents that are...
One thing I would like to emphasize
Yeah.
is simply, I'm not trying to not answer your questions or just keep saying accommodation over and over again, which I recognize that I have, that we are sincerely interested in working through ways to provide these documents to the committee. And we stay in regular communication with the committee, and we know these are a priority for you. And so that makes them a priority for us.
I mean, I would just say it is an absolute constitutional imperative for us to do our jobs, having taken an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. We represent the people, and there are very serious reports that are in the media that have come out in different cases that the domestic emoluments clause is being violated frequently. The foreign government emoluments clause is being violated on an almost daily basis. We have an absolute responsibility to stop that if it's the case. You hold federal office in America, it's not a money-making operation. America's a great country. If you want to go out and make money, just go out and make money. But if you want to be President of the United States, be President of the United States. Your job is to collect your salary and do the people's business, not your business. But our job is to make sure that the Constitution is being respected and the rule of law. I believe, based on what I've seen, which is not enough, which is why we're here today, but I believe, based on what I've seen, that the Trump Hotel and President Trump are in violation of the lease and the provision, which says that no elected official can be deriving any benefit from the lease, the old post office lease with the Trump Hotel. I believe the President is in absolute and repeat violation of the Foreign Government Emoluments Clause, which provides that the President cannot collect a payment of any kind whatever from a prince, a king, or a foreign government. And I think he's in violation of the Domestic Emoluments Clause, which says that he's limited to his salary and he can't be pocketing money from agencies and federal departments that spend money at the Trump Hotel or the Trump Office Tower or Mar-a-Lago or all of these other places. And what we're getting here, perhaps unsurprisingly, but certainly unfortunately, is a stonewalling of the committee. So we are available 24/7. We will meet day, evening, night, whatever we need to do to convince you that this is information that we've got to get. And obviously, you know, we're in a process where we've been rendering subpoenas. We've been holding people in contempt. We know that President Trump ordered everybody in the executive branch to stop cooperating with congressional investigations. And I think what you saw today was a bipartisan expression of frustration with that attitude. There is nothing illegitimate about the representatives of the people obtaining documents that go to our constitutional duty. Let me turn for a second to Mr. Billy. Apparently, you testified, I just want to give you a chance to clear this up quickly. You testified that you were not a lawyer under oath. According to the information the committee has, you do have a JD. Is it just that you have a JD, but you're not a lawyer? You've not taken the bar, is that it? Or
correct.
Oh, gotcha, okay. So I want to go to the legal underpinnings for the closure of OPM. So let me come to you, Ms. Tyson, if I could. Or no, Mr. Billy, I'll come to you. How many formal legal opinions, which would all be responsive to our request, did OPM create or use that assessed the administration's authority to dismantle OPM?
So the administration's proposal is about merging the mission of OPM and the mission of GSA, right, to make sure we have a stable and sustainable platform to deliver on those missions into the future. The legal analysis of what statutory authorities exist today to enact parts of the transaction are still undergoing.
So are there no existing formal legal opinions that you could hand to us that assessed the administration's authority to engage in this reorganization as you describe it?
Yeah, I don't believe that there's any final documents that are ongoing, part of ongoing analysis.
What was the legal analysis or guidance of the administration's authority to order this reorganization before the decision was made? In other words, or did you just not consider it a matter for the lawyers?
So the proposal came out at a high level in June 2018, right? And that put forward kind of the view of what we believed as the possible. And we're continuing to now go through a toll gate process, which is a Six Sigma process, is a best practice in the private sector for transformational change of this kind. And as part of that, we addressed the legal analysis, and so that is one work stream within the toll gate process. Additional work streams include understanding what the impacts to our customers and stakeholders would be, impacts to our workforce, how we can mitigate different things, how we can create more efficiency and effectiveness in service delivery. And so
So those were all the policy considerations you looked at. But why is the legal authority redacted in the documents that OPM provided yesterday? Can we put that back up on the screen? I just want everybody to take a look at them. So legal authority, that whole section is redacted out, which is the one part you think it would be the easiest to turn over because it's an interpretation of the law, right? So can you tell us why the legal authority is redacted in these documents that we received yesterday?
Yeah, so it's an ongoing process. The legal analysis is ongoing, and at this time, we don't have a final analysis to share.
Oh, okay, but why does that give you the authority to redact that? In other words, you're saying that the legal analysis might change or there might be more information given, but why is that justification for blacking out what the legal authority was when that memo was written?
Right, so our acting director has instructed us to provide as much information as we can to this committee, that we fully respect the oversight authority of this committee and want to continue working with you. Our attorneys are providing us guidance right now as we're going through interagency workings to determine what we're able to present and when. We're not withholding anything at this time. We're just going through the process of releasing it all.
Gotcha. All right, so Mr. Billy, so if I'm reading the last several responses correctly together, there was no detailed legal analysis, or there was no legal analysis at all done of the proposed merger before it was accomplished. In other words, there was just an assumption that it was lawful. But how do you know that OPM has not been the subject of an illegal scheme? How do you know that you're not violating the law?
So we know that, as you said, there's an assumption that some parts likely are able to be executed under current statutory authority. We're going through that analysis, and there are different authorities that could potentially move different pieces, how they would affect people versus resources. And so we're going through that full analysis together with our interagency partners in this. We've provided a legislative proposal to this Congress to work with us to engage in the legislative process, because we believe it would be the most effective and efficient way to carry out the entirety of the transformation that we critically need for the agency to help us deliver on merit system principles moving into the future.
Okay. Well, look, in closing out this part of the hearing, I just want to say that the OPM made a very significant decision, essentially to dismantle itself or to dissolve itself without first obtaining any formal opinion as to the legality of this decision. My first take on it, having looked at some of the legal authorities, is that the proposal is likely illegal. The administration came up with a plan and never took care to vet it or to assess its lawfulness. And there are obviously dramatic implications for this. So we will have to proceed there. I would just say generally, and I'll offer Mr. Meadows a chance to close if he has anything to say, but that I hope that all the witnesses heard a very strong bipartisan sense that our ability to get documents is essential to our lawmaking function. And we will never allow that to become a partisan football. We are all committed that when Congress seeks documents, it gets the documents because the lawmaking function is integral to what we do. Mr. Meadows.